Let's go back in time. July 20th, 1969. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. You know the words. Landing on the moon, it wasn't just some scientific milestone. It was a moment that brought the whole world together, a real symbol of what we as humans can do when we reach for the impossible.
And the guy at the heart of this incredible achievement? One man, Wernher von Braun. He was the genius, the visionary, the celebrated director over at NASA who designed the Saturn V rocket that literally blasted us to the stars. He was, for all intents and purposes, a true American hero.
But what if I told you there's a whole other side to this story? Because behind all the parades and the magazine covers, there's a story that's way more complicated and honestly way more disturbing. It's the story of a secret deal that fueled America's greatest victory, and it all starts right as World War II is ending.
Yeah, to really understand how America got to the moon, we have to rewind the clock to the end of the war in a top-secret program with a pretty harmless-sounding name, Operation Paperclip.
Okay, so the mission was, on the surface, pretty simple. Find Germany's most brilliant scientific minds and bring them to the United States. And why? Well, the main goal was to get a huge technological advantage over the Soviet Union in the Cold War, which was just heating up. It was just as much about keeping that expertise out of their hands as it was about getting it for ourselves. And you know, the name Paperclip itself, it tells you a lot. When an American officer found a brilliant scientist they wanted, but that person had, let's say, a problematic Nazi past, they would just attach a paperclip to their file. That little piece of metal was a signal, a way to flag them for recruitment while hiding their history to get them past security. The whole morally gray area of the program was basically baked into its name from day one. And that right there, that brings us to the core conflict of this whole story. To win the future, America basically made a deal with a very dark past. And that deal? It came at a really deep ethical price. This contrast really gets to the heart of the dilemma. I mean, just look at Wernher von Braun again. His public resume? Absolutely stellar. NASA director, architect of the Apollo program, American hero. But his wartime resume tells a totally different story. He was a major in the Nazi SS and the director of the V-2 rocket program, a weapon built using the forced labor of concentration camp prisoners.
Those V-2 rockets? They were put together in this absolutely horrifying underground factory called Mittelwerk. Thousands of prisoners from the Buchenwald concentration camp were forced to work there in just the most brutal conditions you can imagine. People were dying from starvation, disease, exhaustion. And what's worse, evidence shows that von Braun wasn't just some guy in an office. He personally visited camps to handpick skilled laborers for his rocket team.
Now, here's the thing. President Truman had explicitly said no recruiting of ardent Nazis, period. So to get these intellectual assets, as they called them, U.S. intelligence officers basically started a deliberate cover-up. They whitewashed the files, scrubbing any mention of war crimes or deep Nazi sympathies to make sure these men could pass security and eventually become American citizens. And this is where the story gets even bigger, because the impact of Operation Paperclip went way beyond just rockets and space travel. Its influence stretched into almost every corner of American life and industry. It's kind of wild. Seriously, these German scientists totally changed the game for American technology. Their work on magnetic tape, it transformed the entire recording industry. Their techniques for making electronics smaller paved the way for all kinds of portable gadgets. They brought expertise in things like synthetic rubber for our tires. And they even developed ways to sterilize fruit juice without heat, a technique that's still used in food production today. The economic value of all this knowledge was just staggering. Back in 1940s dollars, the patents and industrial processes they brought over were estimated to be worth around $10 billion. It was a massive technological and economic jackpot for the United States. For decades, so much of this history was just kept under wraps, but as classified files started to be opened up, our whole understanding of this program and the men involved, it really began to change, and change dramatically. You know, when the program was first revealed, you had major figures like Albert Einstein voicing total outrage. But then, as the Cold War got more intense, the story kind of shifted. These men were suddenly rebranded as good Germans, apolitical scientists who were just forced to work for the Nazis. Von Braun became a celebrity. He was even on Disney specials talking about the wonders of space exploration. It wasn't really until the 1980s, when declassified documents finally laid out the truth, that public opinion swung back hard towards condemnation. And this isn't just some dusty old history story. Nope. Today, Operation Paperclip is a huge reference point in modern debates.
When we talk about the ethics of AI, or how far we should go for national security, Paperclip is always brought up as this cautionary tale, a historical benchmark for the kinds of moral compromises we make in the name of progress.
So all of this leaves us with a really difficult question. The program gave America the moon landing, technological dominance, a huge economic boost. But it also meant turning a blind eye to some of the most horrific crimes imaginable. So, was it worth it? And maybe more importantly, as we race towards new technological frontiers today, what compromises are we willing to make?